probably where I got one of my biggest push into the track business was Chris Economaki. And he worked for a guy that promoted the Trenton Motor Speedway, the Indianapolis of the East, if you will. And it was great stuff. And I never got over it. Still haven't.
What did you learn from Chris Economaki over the years?
The importance of exaggeration. Chris Economaki, in my mind, set the table. And so much of what I have done over my life is based on how he presented the races. And he presented them so that people that didn't give a fig about them would go to the race and think they saw something special. And they did. Those guys drove their hearts out.
How do you make someone who goes to the track know that they're witnessing something unique that night, every single night, as you mentioned?
Well, exaggeration.
Yeah.
Of course. But isn't that so much of what our life is and what we think we see when we watch television and motion pictures and so forth? But there they were, right there, on the track, right in front of you, going like hell. And Economaki would take incredible sights. I'll give you a story. This actually happened at the Essex Junction Fairgrounds down near Burlington. That was a very beautiful half-mile track. And a lot of records for the trotters and pacers were set on that track. But one day a year, in came the open cockpit cars. And it was magic. One day, this car went sailing down into turn 3, and it spun around and went through the fence, stopped, and that was all Economaki needed. Ladies and gentlemen, somewhere in Pennsylvania, so-and-so miraculously is climbing out that automobile after you just saw him out of control, but he is all right, and he may be back this afternoon to continue the program. Whoa. When Chris got on a roll and was really getting excitement out of the audience, he would develop that story about this guy and so forth. And carried on about him, and he asked to have the fire truck and the ambulance immediately reported to turn 3. You can imagine in the exaggeration, the fear and trembling that went through the grandstand. As he continued it, he overdid it, which he often did. And he's looking out over the track and over the crowd. And he sees in the little flower garden below the start-finish line, a woman fainted. He says, imagine watching your husband going into turn 3 and spinning around on your track and trying to come back now. What a story this is, right? And he'd build on the story. All of a sudden, up came a woman who said, what the hell are you talking about? I am Mrs. Ted Brown, or whatever it was. And he looked over and said, oh, I beg your pardon. Who was that? And the farmer that ran the program at the track said, that lady who fainted had a cow over off the 3rd turn that didn't go to Rutland or the next fair. It still was staked out there. And she was worried about the cow. And he said, oh, I beg your pardon, and so forth. And on we went with the show. But that was the golden days of racing as it grew up, based on a lot of exaggeration, which there is and always will be in racing, but also on the fact that people were serious enough at that time to go out and do those kind of things. We didn't see that in many places. And shortly thereafter, through all of Vermont, there were 10 racetracks, dirt tracks. Farmers would take a field that wasn't doing well, didn't have any crops in it, and they would build a racetrack. And they all needed announcers. Well, I had heard from the very best, the authority, Chris Economaki, and I could imitate him to the to the nines. The beginning of my career.
It all started there.
Certainly did.